Resistance report for April 12th, 2017. In the Resistance report, we try to draw connections. We try to see patterns, get behind the news, understand what the large issues are that may not be on the surface. For example, presumably one of the reasons Donald Trump attacked Barack Obama again today, even though Obama is no longer president, Trump continues to attack him. He attacked him today for improperly surveying me and so many other people. Presumably, a reason that Trump did that was because of reports that the FBI obtained a secret order last summer to monitor the communications of Carter Page. Now, Carter Page, as you may know, was a Trump aide, an advisor, a foreign policy advisor. And the FBI, in order to get this particular warrant to listen in on the communications of Carter Page, had to convince, and this is the important point, it had to convince something called a Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court, a judge in the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court, that there was probable cause to believe that Page was acting as an agent of Russia. Now, they obviously did convince that judge that there was probable cause to believe that Page was acting as an agent of Russia in order to get that surveillance. So when Trump is talking about his aides being improperly surveyed, what he's leaving out is the big story, obviously, and that is that a federal surveillance court judge found that there was probable cause to actually think that some of these people, like Carter Page, were acting as foreign agents. Now, White House spokesman Sean Spicer has continuously sought to distance Trump from some of these aides, like Page. He described Page as one of many campaign hangers-on. But Trump himself listed Page as one of his foreign policy advisors in March 2016. That was an interview during the campaign that Trump did with the Washington Post. Now, this is important background. This all happened today in terms of people understanding this probable cause issue and Trump blaming Obama once again for surveying his people. Obviously, Obama didn't do that. The FBI did that. But also today, and here's the important connection, Trump suggested that Russia knew of Syria's plan to gas innocent civilians before Syria actually did it. This is an explosive allegation. Jim Mattis, the Secretary of Defense, and Rex Tillerson, the Secretary of State, have been careful to say that there's absolutely no evidence that Russia did know what Syria was going to do before Syria did it. So why did Trump today make that explosive allegation against Russia? Or here's another thing he did today. This was a 180-degree turnaround. He said, with regard to NATO, now you remember his position on NATO during the campaign, and up until quite recently, was he wasn't sure it was a good idea. He wanted NATO nations to pay their full cost, to pay their dues, their fees. He said today, I did say it was obsolete. It no longer is obsolete. He called NATO a great alliance and the bulwark of international peace and security. Now, you understand, Russia basically wants to break NATO up. I mean, one of Russia's basic, fundamental foreign policy objectives is to get rid of a united Europe and also undermine NATO. So Trump did 180 degrees today, both with regard to Trump, Syria, Putin, and Syria's gas attack, and that saying that Russia knew about it beforehand. He also did 180 degrees with regard to NATO, but then he said something else. For good measure, he said United States relations with Russia are now at an all-time low. An all-time low. Well, so what's going on here? I mean, outwardly, nothing has changed. Russia has not done anything differently than it has been doing for a very long time. What is motivating Trump today to do this seemingly 180-degree turn with regard to Russia? Well, one possibility, obviously, is he's being advised as president. He's getting a lot more information about Russia, and maybe the State Department, maybe the Pentagon are alerting him to things about Putin that he did not know, and he's got a new perspective. That's option number one. It may be true, or possibly number two, Trump has found that despite his friendly overtures to Putin during the campaign, and really up through last week or the week before last, Putin did not reciprocate. And Trump is somebody who very easily holds a grudge or gets angry and gets vindictive if he doesn't feel that he's being treated fairly or he doesn't feel like he's getting the upper hand. Maybe that was it. But there is a third possibility as well. And that third possibility goes to what I was talking about a moment ago with regard to Carter Page and the noose of this investigation with regard to Trump and Russian operatives during the election getting tighter and tighter and tighter. Maybe what Trump wants to do is distance himself further and further and further from Putin, create the impression that Putin is public enemy number one in Trump's mind. Instead of ingratiating himself, in other words, to Putin, Trump, as a defense, as a way of deflecting attention from this investigation, wants to create the impression that he really hates Putin. He doesn't trust Putin. Which is it? I don't know, but Trump doesn't seem bound by anything he has said in the past about anything. Not only did he change his mind about bombing Syria, you remember, just a couple of years ago he said, don't bomb Syria, even though Syria at that time had been engaged in a toxic gas attack, a sarin attack on Syria's people. At that time, Trump said, no, don't bomb Syria. And then he was against NATO, and now he's for NATO. Today he said that China should not be labeled a currency manipulator. Now that's another 180-degree swing. He said during the campaign China will be labeled a currency manipulator. He said without any explanation. These things don't come with explanations, folks. They don't have any logic tied to them. He said about Janet Yellen with regard to chairing the Fed. Today, another 180-degree swing. During the campaign, remember, he called her political and accused her of keeping interest rates down in order to make the economy do well or better under Barack Obama. Now, today, what did he say? He said, I like her, I respect her. He suggested very strongly that he's going to re-nominate her to the Fed. He has changed his mind about almost everything, releasing his tax returns, divesting himself from his financial empire once in office, the evils of Goldman Sachs, the irresponsibility of a president taking a lot of golf vacations, the importance of Michael Flynn, the importance of even Stephen Bannon. He's now distancing himself from Bannon. Now, I think it is important that a president be flexible when new facts justify a change of mind. But in none of these areas has there been anything new. There is no new fact. It seems, with regard to Donald Trump, as if nothing he says reflects any basic principle or deeply held belief or a carefully considered point of view. It is all up in the air all of the time, except for three things. These are the constants. If you want to understand Donald Trump and you want to understand what really motivates him, these are the three that will be and you can rely on. Number one, winning. Doesn't matter what he's winning. He wants to win. He wants to show that he's on the winning side. And number two, getting even. Vindictiveness is a powerful centerpiece of Donald Trump. And number three, making money. Winning getting even, and making money are the three dominant motivators of Donald Trump throughout his entire life. And you look at his presidency and you see those again and again recurring. Now, on the third, that is making money, Trump's business, now run by his two adult sons, has 157 trademark applications pending in 36 countries, according to today's New York Times. Now, most of these have to do with the Trump brand. He's not selling anything anymore. It's not buildings. It's not goods and services. Nothing he's produced. It's his Trump brand. That's what Ivanka's selling. It's a brand. So a trademark is the way that a brand becomes valuable. A trademark is a brand. And with all these trademark applications pending in 36 countries, you can bet that there is a huge amount of money dependent on what these countries decide about these trademark applications. And you can also bet that Donald Trump has a great deal of decision-making authority that these countries are depending on over all sorts of decisions. Decisions having to do with trade, with foreign policy, with international banking, with foreign aid, with the use of military force. You can bet you are a prime minister or a major politician in one of these 157 trademark applications in 36 countries. You're in these 36 countries. You are very much aware of what you need to do to court Donald Trump. Now, doesn't all of this violate the Constitution? It would seem so. Article 1, Section 9. It's called the Emoluments Clause. We've talked about it before. Donald Trump is violating the Emoluments Clause, which says that no high government official can take gifts from any foreign government. It's designed to avoid conflicts of interest. It's designed to make sure that public officials are acting in the interest of the United States and not being bribed by a foreign government. So, how can we enforce the Emoluments Clause, Article 1, Section 9, against Donald Trump? Well, there was a lawsuit. A lawsuit was filed in January in the Southern District of New York by a very distinguished group called Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics in Washington, joined by several prominent constitutional scholars, such as Lawrence Tribe of Harvard University, seeking a judgment that Trump has violated the Emoluments Clause. Now, who is representing Donald Trump in that lawsuit? This is a big deal, folks. Who is representing Donald Trump in this pending lawsuit? It turns out that it is the United States Department of Justice. You heard me right. It's the United States Department of Justice in a legal brief that is expected to be filed this month. Department lawyers will argue that the framers of the Constitution meant only to rule out gifts and compensation for services rather than for any favorable policies by a high government official. And that in any event, the court has no authority to decide this case. No court does, because the power to waive the Emoluments Clause lies exclusively with Congress. That's what Donald Trump's lawyers, the Department of Justice, will be arguing. And then they will also argue that Donald Trump is right because this group of eminent people, they have no standing to sue anyway. Now, answer me this. Why is it that the United States Department of Justice, representing Trump's personal financial interests, why is it representing Trump's personal financial interests and not your interests and my interests and the common good, the broader interests of the citizens of the United States in making sure that our high government officials are not bribed by foreigners? well, who's representing us exactly here? Don't the rest of us have a right to be represented? Why is the United States Department of Justice representing Donald J. Trump and his private financial interests? I mean, we are paying taxes to support the Department of Justice. It's not even clear that Donald Trump is paying taxes, at least since 2005. Having the United States Department of Justice representing Donald Trump's financial interests, and his financial interests around the world, mind you, is just another way that Trump is fleecing America and making money off his presidency. We, the people of the United States, deserve to be represented against Donald Trump's far-flung personal businesses. He can afford his own lawyer. When you meet your member of Congress on recess this week, and I hope you do, make sure they understand your point of view on that. One final issue relating to all the others. Trump and other high-profile critics of Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act, have been arguing that its private insurance markets are collapsing. You hear, even today, Donald Trump said, well, Obamacare is going to collapse of its own weight. In fact, Donald Trump and Republicans have been working very hard to make sure that the Affordable Care Act does collapse. It's not collapsing. The Congressional Budget Office said that it was stable, but now that Trump and Republicans are in charge, they can create a self-fulfilling prophecy. They can make this entire system unravel. Insurers that sell directly to individuals through the exchanges under the Affordable Care Act must, according to the Act, offer to lower out-of-pocket expenses for low-income customers, and they get reimbursed by the federal government. We are paying taxes in order that that happens. High-income individuals in the United States pay more tax so that reimbursement of low-income people can occur under the Affordable Care Act. But here is the catch. The Affordable Care Act did not explicitly appropriate this money. The Obama administration paid the money, that is, these reimbursements for low-income people, paid the money anyway, claiming it had authority to do so, but then House Republicans disagreed. Now, you may remember this. Sounds a little arcane, but it's going to become very, very important, so you need to understand it. They sued. House Republicans sued, and last year they won in a district court, throwing the future of those payments into doubt. Now, this is when Obama is still in office. The Obama administration appealed that decision, and a district judge basically stayed it, which means that the decision has no bearing right now. But the Trump administration hasn't said whether it will appeal. It might pursue that appeal. That started with the House Republicans, that said there's no authority in the act to actually reimburse low-income people. Now, all Trump has done is to say that the payments will be made as long as the case is active. Now, if you're an insurer, I'm not on the side of insurers, but this whole act depends on the cooperation of insurers. And if you're an insurer, that assurance from Donald Trump is pretty much meaningless, since the administration could decide tomorrow to drop the appeal, to make the appeal. This is putting insurers in a financial bind because they've got to make plans and commitments within a few weeks. If they don't feel that they are going to be reimbursed, they are not going to make any commitments. And that is going to cause a death spiral. And you were going to hear Republicans, Paul Ryan, Donald Trump, others say, well, see, we told you that the Affordable Care Act was going to be in a death spiral. It's not in a death spiral. But it might be if they don't really act to stabilize those reimbursable funds for low-income people. They are creating, and can easily create over the next few weeks, a self-fulfilling prophecy of the unraveling of the Affordable Care Act. Don't be fooled into thinking it's the fault of the act. Your members of Congress are on recess. They are holding town halls. If they're not, they should be. Even if they're not, make sure they are held accountable for not doing it. And when you hold them accountable, if you see them, if you can ask questions, number one, ask them about how they're going to guarantee a full and fair investigation of Trump's campaign connections and possible collusion with Russian operatives. How are they going to do that? Are they going to support an independent commission, a special prosecutor, an independent prosecutor, a select committee? What are they going to do? Number two, Trump's tax returns. Are they going to demand those tax returns? By the way, this Saturday, just wanted to remind you, go to taxmarch.org. There is going to be a march in your community, probably all over this country, to get Trump to recognize his responsibility with regard to his tax returns. Number three, you want to mention Trump's conflicts of interest. What are they going to do about it? What are your members of Congress going to do about Trump's flagrant conflicts of interest? And finally, number four, what about preserving the Affordable Care Act? What are they going to do to make sure what I said doesn't come true, that it's not a self-fulfilling prophecy simply because Trump cannot and will not and refuses to assure insurers that reimbursement funds will be there for low-income people? Turn to your questions in just a moment. I just wanted to remind you that the Resistance Report is now in podcast form. You can find it on iTunes at Resistance Report. All right, your questions. Joel Henajosa. Can Mitch McConnell change voting rules for any bill presented on the floor that doesn't have enough votes to pass? Joel, no, he cannot. The Constitution does not allow him to simply say something can pass with 20% or 30%. No, it's got to be at least a majority, according to the Constitution. Julie Waller, is there a budget limit on how much Trump can spend on trips to Florida and Melania's expenses for the Secret Service? No, Julia, there is not. There should be. That's another thing to bring up with your member of Congress. Why should Trump be spending 3 to 5 times as much as Barack Obama spent on Secret Service and on travel and on golf holidays? Karen Ward, I'm disappointed that the Democratic National Committee did so little to support the Democratic candidates in the Kansas special election. By the way, Karen, I meant to talk about that. The Democratic candidate, did lose, but did remarkably well. Nobody thought he would do as well as he did do. And that is causing a lot of Republicans to get very worried, appropriately, about 2018. Is this what we can expect in the next 2 special elections as well? I hope not, Karen. I think the Democratic National Committee has got to understand that sending a huge signal, and that would send a huge signal, if a Democrat won in one of these traditionally deep red districts, that would send a huge signal. That's worth an investment by the Democratic National Committee. Nidia Pear, what will it take to undo what is occurring in the Department of Education, to the Environmental Protection Agency, and so forth, administration? In other words, all around government. What you are asking is, what can we do to reverse the tragic course that's happening? Department of Justice, throw it in the Department of Justice, throw in the State Department. All of these departments are now being headed by HUD, Housing and Urban Development as well. They're being headed by people who have the opposite view of what the department is intended to do. They are not faithfully executing the laws. What can be done? Well, the only thing we can do is get a new president who's going to appoint people who will faithfully execute the laws. Justin Ross, If hypothetically Democrats had the majority of the House, do you think they would have the courage to begin impeachment proceedings on the known grounds for impeachment, or would they wait for a surefire Russian connection? Justin, I believe that because there are other grounds for impeachment, a Democratic majority in the House would begin impeachment proceedings. Remember, that impeachment is an inquiry. Impeachment turns the House into a court of inquiry. And that seems to me, if we get up to a certain threshold of probability with regard to the FBI investigation of Trump campaign collusion with Russian operatives, notwithstanding all the other reasons for impeachment, that would, to me, justify the House turning into an impeachment inquiry. The Senate then convicts of impeachment. Jenny Hills, why is CEO pay so high? Jenny, CEO pay is so high because CEOs are basically padding their own nests at the expense of investors. CEO pay was on average 6 times the pay of average workers. In the 1950s, in the 1980s, it was about 20 times the pay of average workers. In the 1990s, it went up to about 40 times the pay of average workers. Now CEO pay is 300 times in big companies. Big companies I'm talking about. 300 times the pay of average workers. It's called greed. Debbie Darwin, can we as citizens file a lawsuit against the president? Debbie, the answer is usually no. I mentioned to you that case now filed in New York in the district court by essentially a group of citizens, including constitutional law experts, alleging that Donald Trump has violated Article 1, Section 9, the Emoluments Clause, by conducting his businesses in ways that foreign governments are tempted, in fact they already are, in many respects, bribing him. But that court has not yet decided whether those people have standing to sue. Generally speaking, citizens cannot and don't have standing to sue a president. 2 more questions. Diana Cameron, it feels like a lot of conservatives and Trump supporters truly believe things are going well and give Trump the benefit of the doubt. How can we get these people to realize Trump and his administration are not their allies? Diana, in my experience with, and I know I've said this before, a number of Trump supporters, the true believers, those who believe that Trump is sent essentially from another planet, from heaven, wherever you want, but that he is a superhuman, you're never going to change their minds, no matter what he does, no matter how many promises he breaks. But there are a lot of Trump supporters who voted for him because they wanted something new in Washington. They wanted basically an end to a rigged system. They hated crony capitalism. I'm with them. I hate crony capitalism and I hate the rigging of our political system as well. They are not going to stay with Trump if they see, as I think they're beginning to see, that Trump is part of the rigging of the system. But in order for Democrats to prevail in 2020, we have got to come up with not only a presidential candidate, but also congressional candidates in 2018 and 2020 who will say the truth, who will commit themselves to unrigging the system, getting big money out of politics, making our system work for everyone instead of a small group at the top. Christopher McVeigh, many Republicans, with the notable exceptions of Trump and Pruitt, are now seemingly open to a carbon tax. How can we put pressure on them to continue to pursue this option? Christopher, I hope you're right. Some former Republican office holders did come up with a carbon tax plan that has many admirable features to it. I was amazed that in this day and age, Republicans, even former Republican office holders, had the courage to come out with a carbon tax plan. Doesn't mean that current Republican office holders are supportive of this. But I believe they may be. That is, their constituents, people who are independents, people like you, can put more and more pressure on them. If they are hardcore climate change deniers, forget it. But if they are at least within range of reason, you might have some influence. So again, I want to urge you, all of you, to continue to get involved, to continue to make a ruckus, to continue to consult with indivisibleguide.com, swingleft.org, and this other site that's being built, sisterdistrict.com. They will help you be an activist, help you put more pressure on your members of Congress, and you are doing it. I just want to say once again, although the special election in Kansas was a bit of a disappointment, I was personally amazed at how well the Democratic candidate did. There are special elections coming up next week in Atlanta and other places. Pay attention. Be active. It is your responsibility and your privilege as a citizen. Again, the Resistance Report is available on podcast at iTunes. Keep up the fight. That's the end of tonight's Resistance Report. I'll see you tomorrow.